you're on. It's hotwired.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to our community engagement sessions, the third of 3 sessions that the Police Service Board has put together for us for our conversation around AI and the intersection with policing. Our first session was on September the 23rd, second October 14th, and today our final in the 3-part community engagement. I want to welcome everyone, both here and online, who are joining us today. And thank you for all of your contributions so far in this process so that we can hear and get your feedback around how artificial intelligence will impact your lives as it intersects with policing. I want to acknowledge the presence of my fellow board members, Mr. Omar Khan, and Samita Kohli, our vice chair, our Executive Director, Rob Serpe, and of course, our very supportive board staff who work so hard to make sure that these things are organized for you as members of the community. We always start off by kind of centering ourselves in this conversation, and you'll notice, well, many of us, some of us haven't gotten our poppies as yet, but some of us have. And it's a reminder we repeat the known phrase, lest we forget. Lest we forget the sacrifice of those who, passed on, those who made tremendous sacrifice for the freedoms that we enjoy today. And so in acknowledging that, we also acknowledge that the land on which we are operating today, and where the region of Peel operates, is within the treaty lands of the Mississauga of the Credit and First Nations. And these are traditional lands of the Anishinaabe, Haudenosaunee, and Wendat nations. And for thousands of years, Indigenous people have inhabited it and cared for these lands and continue to do so even today. And so we are grateful to have the opportunity to work in this territory, and in doing so, respect the land's significance for all residents of the region of Peel. So having centered ourselves in that, just, some quick notes regarding the value of these sessions. AI is something that's going to clearly affect all of our lives in different ways. And so although the conversations here are focused around the intersection with policing, what I've been hearing as I talk to individuals in our community is that there's almost an acceptance that artificial intelligence is here to stay. We are going to interact with it in some ways. So it makes sense then if we are going to implement any of these tools in policing, that we do so with your feedback, with your input, with your contributions. And that's what these sessions are here for, to hear from the members of our community and to have real, genuine engagement with you. We have structured it so that we have individuals doing delegations, but in no means is it intended to be the only voices from community, those who lead a delegation. The previous sessions, we had even opportunities for those in the room to share additional comments and questions for service, and seems like that approach was well received. So thank you for all of you who have participated, shown up. Some people are here for all the sessions. I see some folks nodding. Yes, I've seen you for all the sessions, and we're truly grateful for your contribution and just showing up and participating. So like we have done in the previous sessions, we lead off with the experts who have spent a little more time with the subject matter. We have our Deputy Chief, Anthony Oduardi, who has been kind of our lead within the city. We have Professor Daniel Konikoff, and who is a privacy and policy specialist. And we have Claudia McCoy, who is our public policy specialist, who will be leading that part of the conversation. But before I turn over to them, there are some others in the audience that I want to acknowledge. I see our Councillor Martin Reed from Ward 4 it is? Ward 9. Ward 9. It's, you know why that happens, Martin? It's how you write your handle. It's 449, right? 4 for Ward 9. So it's Ward 9 in Mississauga. Thank you for your consistent support. I see also members of the ARAC committee who are here representing Patricia and Sophia. Welcome. I also see our staff superintendent, Dirk Niles. And there are others here whose faces I know, but it's hard to recognize some of you from this distance. So I just welcome everyone and thank you for being here. So I'll now turn over to Anthony, who will lead off this part of the conversation with our expert panel, who will share their thoughts. We're going to talk primarily today about importance of privacy and data protection and policy in the use of artificial intelligence in policing. So over to you, our Deputy Chief, Anthony Oduardi.
Okay, good evening, everyone, and good evening to everyone online and everyone who's taken the time out today to come in person and participate. This is very important. It's the third of 3 series related to the engagement on behalf of the Police Services Board on artificial intelligence. Hey, can I tell you a story first, just quickly before I move on? I think it's very important. Mr. Carby mentioned that, there seems to be an acceptance, and today I was opening up a technology conference, and part of the technology conference was in relation to artificial intelligence and the possibilities of how it can be used in public safety. And I'm going to get to a little bit in the slides relating to mindset versus literacy. And I recall about 25 years ago, my mother, who's elderly, and all our relatives are overseas in other countries around the world. And there was a closed posture from my mother to accept technology in being able to communicate with relatives around the world. And at that moment in time, she was still handwriting letters, which, can I tell you, is such a beautiful way to communicate if you have that time and patience to receive information from loved ones. But in times of strikes and service disruptions, and to be quite honest with you, in moments where life passes us by very quick, I acknowledged my mother's love for our family and said, why don't we incorporate some technology in here? There's technology that allows you to see your sisters and brothers and your nieces and nephews around the world in real time and communicate and keep up to date. And what I asked from my mother was just to keep an open mindset. And you're going to hear that a little later on in my conversation. And what an open mindset does is allows you to digest information in a way that is neutral. Like this presentation you're about to hear tonight. It's neither for nor against. It's not about good or bad. It's about understanding the possibilities of artificial intelligence. And as a community coming around that, and being able to decide whether or not it's the right thing for public safety. And in the case of whether it is, how we use it, and in the case of whether it's not, how we avoid it. And so I tell you that just very briefly because today my mother uses Facebook and WhatsApp on a daily basis. And she's never been happier. She communicates daily, and it's like having her people in her lives with her every day. But on the flip side, she knows not to use some other platforms which cause risk and harm to family and friends and neighbors on a technology platform. And so what I'm saying is, if my mother can keep an open mindset, I hope everyone else can. Today, we're going to not talk about individual AI tools, but we know that artificial intelligence is evolving daily. Hey, listen, by the time we're done our governance meeting tonight and hearing from you, there'll be an enhancement or an evolution in artificial intelligence which has changed or had some opportunity with some organization around the world. Of course, Gartner, a worldwide leader in technology, defines AI literacy as being able to use AI effectively and responsibly in society. And this is what we're here today to hear from you. And of course, the mindset that I talk about isn't about having a mindset of implementing or not. It's about being open to the possibilities and embracing the principles and potential of artificial intelligence to understand how we can use it for good and also understand the harms and impacts that it can have on society, especially as it relates to public safety. Listen, as I travel around Canada and North America, either virtually or in person, and speak to police chiefs and their deputy chiefs and command staff, I want you to know that they really don't have a good handle on it. Often, public safety or a community identify artificial intelligence with a proprietary tool. When I ask what artificial intelligence means to public safety folks, they'll point to a specific tool: facial recognition, automatic license plate readers, predictive policing. But that's not what artificial intelligence is. Those are tools that artificial intelligence can enable. Artificial intelligence allows, in cases, to automate digitally mundane tasks and arrive at an output, especially with generative AI, that would otherwise take time and effort from a human being. That is not to be mistaken for general artificial intelligence, which you will see in movies and in TV shows that assumes that there is emotion in intelligence information that is garnered by a computer, and we're just not there yet. So AI in the Canadian public safety context contemplates several things, mainly a national strategy which is yet to be defined, although it is being curated, and some of that will be assisted by the work that you will hear from Claudia McCoy a little later on from Upsurgence. Of course, Daniel Konikoff, the professor whom we work with and is very passionate related to this subject. You hear about regulations or the lack of, and how things that are being done in relation to artificial intelligence across borders, especially in Europe and around the African continent, and how that shapes policies here in Canada. Privacy and rights, which I will argue for a public safety sector would be the #1 consideration before the implementation of any artificial intelligence tool. And of course, the applications, not just in public safety, not just in policing. You have to understand that artificial intelligence is shaping the way other systems like education and healthcare, finance, our natural resources, how they empower smart cities, how that all together in relation to public safety can also shape strong ethical legal implementations. So we're on a pathway, and we want to understand from our community and be open to it on how we believe and how the community believes the artificial intelligence tool can enable positive public safety outcomes. Now, you're going to hear me talk about human oversight and human in the loop. It is one of the fundamental pillars of how we at Peel Regional Police will go about, if reasonable, in terms of community co-design, understand how we implement artificial intelligence in any one area. A human in the loop makes sure that humans are involved in every decision along the way on how artificial intelligence is employed and ultimately deployed in our police service. Using artificial intelligence to identify systemic issues will be very important. It has to be community anchored. We're going to hear a lot more about this from Upsurgence and Claudia McCoy's excellent work in the area to understand how the community should be enabled and shape the implementation and deployment of artificial intelligence. Listen, 4 years ago, the chief acknowledged that systemically in policing, racism has existed. We've undertaken a project with the Ontario Human Rights Commission and our Police Services Board to identify and eradicate that. And that also has to be in consideration with the implementation of AI to make sure that non-discriminatory practices occur with the implementation. And so we want to make sure that we have policies in place that can articulate the values and principles of AI We want to ensure that strong guardrails are undertaken to make sure that the community understands and defines the boundaries of which AI can be utilized in public safety. Of course, as I mentioned, we'll consider human rights, equality and privacy, transparency, just like we did with body-worn camera, in terms of not only its use, but our reporting on when it's used, when it's not used properly, auditing, and having public engagement to help continually shape those processes, and making sure there's an accountability and oversight mechanism overseeing our implementation. So I think at this point, I'm going to turn it over to the professor, Daniel, who's, Angela, can I just get the cue that he is online and ready to go? And I normally do talk about privacy and privacy considerations, but I will turn it over to the professor now, and I'll operate his slide deck for the community and for ourselves, for the community on his presentation. So as soon as you give me the thumbs up, I'll turn it over to Daniel Kanikoff.
I am here. Can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Am I audible? Oh, amazing. Wonderful. Do you mind going back to the previous slide? Actually, I'll take it from there. That's wonderful. Thank you so much, Deputy Chief. I appreciate it. I'm really grateful to be here, albeit from afar, and I appreciate the opportunity to participate in these important and very necessary engagement sessions. My remarks today will very much complement what has already been discussed by Drs. Akwasi Owusu-Bempah and Kanika Samuels-Wortley. I'll be touching upon privacy, data protection, transparency, as well as the policy implications of police's use of artificial intelligence. Again, I'll be touching on similar ideas that were already engaged with at previous sessions, as you can't really think about AI policy and AI policy in law enforcement without thinking about human rights and the public in whose name these tools are used. So to begin, it's worth taking a really bird's eye view of policy in the context of AI and policing. And we can think of policy broadly as the set of statements, maybe that lay out principles, values, and intentions that are ultimately meant to guide institutional decision-making. In the context of AI and policing, policies can really articulate the values and principles that are guiding AI use in law enforcement, and more clearly articulate, as Deputy Chief Edwardi had already mentioned, the guardrails that can be used to prevent against misuse and abuse of ever-powerful technologies. And so we can dig into what those values and principles are here, and what sort of protections against misuse these policies can mount and should mount. These key considerations will include things like the mitigation of risk and minimizing harm. This involves providing for measures like impact assessments, AI system audits, professional training, and more. Instruments that can really allow law enforcement to identify possible harms to individuals and groups that may result from using AI-enabled tools and identify them ideally before these tools are implemented. We can think too of the risks and harms from police use of AI as sort of coming in all shapes and sizes. You know, when we talk about risk and harm, it's best to be specific as we can. We can talk about anything that can comprise or that can compromise physical, mental, economic, or social well-being, such as maybe discriminatory impacts of algorithmic bias, as well as privacy violations. Policies should not only really help police identify potential risks and harms that might come with using artificial intelligence, but ultimately allow room for police to maybe steer clear of certain tools in the first place, or mitigate those risks and harms and adjust practices accordingly. Policies should also further articulate important aspects of AI accountability. We will get to those shortly. But before turning to the next slide, I want to add that police must also consider, lawfulness when crafting policy, which is itself related to the respecting of human rights and this broader human rights project of which Peel is very much a part. On top of clearly articulating the legislation, that grants legal authority to use of these tools and the collection of data therein, these policies should require that police adopting AI systems do so in a way that is ultimately respectful of human dignity, and that they're doing so in a way that upholds charter rights of people whom they're sworn to protect. Lawfulness and the respect of human rights will undoubtedly engage such essential considerations as equality rights, ensuring that AI tools do not result in discrimination, as well as privacy rights, to which we turn now. So if we can go to the next slide. Perfect. Privacy is a fundamental human right in the digital age. In Canadian law enforcement, privacy is protected by municipal and provincial and federal legislation. In Canada, we might take our cue federally from the Privacy Act. Police in Ontario have at their disposal access to regulators like the Information and Privacy Commissioner of Ontario, who provide guidance and consultations on how police can use cutting-edge tools in a privacy-compliant way. Municipal police forces are also bound by municipal acts, and Peel is bound by the Municipal Freedom of Information and Protection of Privacy Act, also referred to as MFIPA. So in policing, the lawfulness of AI policies are essential here, and that policies and regulations should very much align with the privacy protections of the jurisdiction in which a police department is already operating in. Privacy is a domain where that lawfulness is essential. And even though much of Canada's privacy regime predates the boom of AI and public safety, and that efforts to update it have hit multiple snags, it doesn't mean that these older pieces of legislation are totally irrelevant, because there are some tech-neutral universal privacy principles that are still relevant. And so we can look at a few of these principles here, which can ultimately bolster and improve law enforcement's privacy practices and ultimately inform policies as they venture off into considering the use of artificial intelligence. One consideration is consent, right? AI systems can collect and process personal data and vast amounts of it without individual knowledge or consent. This can undermine the principle that individuals should ultimately have some control over their own information. And so policies here can help guide police in the dialogue that they engage the public in about how their data might be used in the context of law enforcement, and ensure that whenever data-hungry tools are considered, the public is ultimately informed, and that their consent, which it might not necessarily be a given certain tools and applications, that consent is valid and meaningful and legitimately obtained. We also think about data control here. So with the influx of new data streams from different law enforcement technologies, like automated license plate readers or social media monitoring or CCTV cameras and so on, AI systems have the potential to receive massive amounts of information, right? And the sheer volume of this raises questions around who controls it and how is it protected and how is it managed. Ideally, law enforcement agencies have mechanisms in place that can be used to safeguard and protect that information. The information that law enforcement has might be sensitive. And so law enforcement needs to ensure that their policies are capable of allowing them to adequately identify, assess, monitor, and ultimately mitigate risks to privacy that the use of these data-reliant AI tools involve. And this very much engages issues of data security, and raises questions like, are there protections against outside access? And is data protected against undue disclosure? Is the data identifiable in the case of breach? All of these are relevant considerations when thinking about AI-driven tools in law enforcement. And further, if data is under law enforcement control, do those to whom that data pertain have some form of accessing it? Are individuals given some modicum of control here too, and how their data is ultimately used? Are there mechanisms in place for, Are there mechanisms in place for the people about whom data is collected to have it perhaps removed or corrected if it is outdated or requiring updating? And when we speak about data control, we might also be thinking about questions of proportionality, that the collection is controlled rather than unwieldy. And so to that end, we may ask, is data collection limited to what is directly related to and necessary for the purposes of law enforcement? I think that these questions of proportionality and necessity are essential when thinking about collection. And so finally, we come to accountability here. Are these systems subject to ongoing review to ensure continued compliance with privacy policies? Ultimately, as Deputy Chief Eduardi mentioned, the buck stops with humans, right? And they'll discuss human in the loop further, right? AI systems ought to remain within law enforcement's control and within a human's control, and not the other way around. And so as we think about accountability, I think we can wrap up here with a quick little bit on privacy. We can go to the next slide, please. Since I very much view that what we're doing here this evening, as well as in the preceding two sessions, to very much be a part of that. Transparency is essential to democratic policing, to ensuring that law enforcement upholds and abides by the rule of law and does so with consent of the public. Transparency is crucial to policies on the use of AI in law enforcement, and has only become more crucial given controversies that police in Canada have reckoned with over the past decade and a bit with respect to the use of powerful technologies in private, right? And so when we think about transparency, some key considerations come up here. So like for one, police should be partnering with technology vendors who themselves are as transparent as possible, right? And who don't hold police to perhaps non-disclosure agreements that would prevent police from fulfilling their transparency obligations to the public. Explainability is another important consideration when thinking about transparency and how to build explainability into policies around artificial intelligence. The explainability of AI is important for humans to ultimately be able to trust and interpret an AI system's decision-making. Not all AI tools are easily explained, and sometimes they're stuck in a black box where it's kind of mysterious how their outputs came to be, and where it's unclear how these tools reached a certain conclusion. Not only should policies be designed to prevent police from acquiring tools that reach conclusions in very opaque and unclear ways, but they should be making efforts, as many are now doing, to explain AI tools to the public, right? Like, so what we're doing this evening. This can involve perhaps articulating paths from data input to output, but also just explaining more generally how tools are being used and how they aren't. And I think this is very achievable. Like in Europe, for example, the Artificial Intelligence Act that applies to the continent mandates that individuals can, if they'd like, obtain a clear and meaningful explanation of the role an AI system played in a decision that impacted them. Right? Good transparency can involve laying bare those technical workings of an algorithm, right? Getting into its guts, if you will, but which may only be understandable to more technical audiences, but can also involve providing a rationale or a reason for an AI-produced outcome, ideally with explanations and reasoning in language that non-experts can understand. Right? And finally, we get to this idea of public engagement and raising awareness and trust building. So to that end, I think it's hard for the public trust, for publics to trust that which we don't understand, or that in which we have no say, right? It's hard to trust what we don't understand, hard to trust in what we don't have a say. Policies can outline requirements and should outline requirements for law enforcement agencies to ensure the public is aware and informed about the AI tools under consideration, and that they have a chance to ask questions about these tools and engage with law enforcement on acceptable and unacceptable applications of these tools, and engage on whether they think these tools are acceptable at all. Right? When these modes of public oversight are enshrined in policy, and when these modes of transparency are stated and articulated as requirements, then perhaps the people of Peel, right, or of any jurisdiction that is considering folding AI into their law enforcement can perhaps come to trust more that police serve best interests, right? There's a lot more to be said here on privacy and transparency considerations in AI policy, but I will stop here because I think I'm probably straining my 15-minute limit. And of course, this is only the beginning of a conversation on it that I'm very happy to be a part of. So with that, I will pass it back to either Deputy Chief or Claudia.
Thank you, Professor, and looking forward to our engagement tomorrow night as well. At this moment, I'll turn it over to Claudia McCoy, Principal of Upsurgence. And I think Claudia is going to take just a couple minutes to introduce herself and the work that she's previously completed, and which led to the study and the work that she's presenting to us tonight. Thank you, Claudia.
Yes, actually, thank you so much, Deputy. And Daniel, I'm disappointed that I didn't get to meet you in the flesh. I keep meeting you online. Yes, first of all, I'm going to introduce myself. My name is Claudia McCoy. I am the principal of Upsurgence. And I'm actually both excited and nervous in this moment. I'm excited because of the history and the work that has led all of us here, and particularly why I'm here today. We all remembered the dark cloud around not only that we were experiencing COVID, but we were experiencing what we saw in the news around George Floyd. And at that moment, we realized that we had some reckoning, personally in systems. I got a call from a few members of the community, and we had a mayor who was in Mississauga that really wanted to figure out how we could make sure that we made a good audit and making sure that the community was accessible and equitable. There was a group of people brought together that made up something called the Black Caucus at the time. And we worked on what are the areas and points of inequity where are the points where we were, that Mississauga may be facing things that were not equitable. Couldn't say that word no matter how much I tried. What we ended up doing was having 6 sessions. This was going to happen when I needed it. We had 6 sessions, and one of the sessions was on policing. That was a very intense discussion. Inside of that, we had something that many people thought wasn't going to make sense that we do. This is, what, 3 years ago, which was exploring the impact that of something futuristic that it felt like at the time, which is the advent and the adoption of AI, and how could AI impact communities in general, and specifically Black residents. Deputy O'Doherty, that was the first time I think we engaged. It was during COVID, so it was over the internet. And we realized at that moment when people were having conversations around AI that the community didn't quite know what was coming. I had a wonderful conversation with Dr. Brenda McPhail, who was at the time of the Canadian Civil Liberties Association, who's now at the IPC, Ontario, I believe. And she made it very, very clear that one of the best ways to inform, engage, and get the participation of the community was indeed to have a statement of principle. The statement of principle is not a legal document, so it wouldn't be wrapped up in courts and battles and all that, where lawyers win. We wanted a situation where we could have, instead of a reactionary narrative between communities and police, we wanted a proactive, collaborative context. And so the concept of having the statement of principle was born. We went and had co-design sessions and made sure that that idea was reinforced and by community wants and need, and they indeed said yes. And I was really happy and quite frankly, can I say, shocked that Peel Regional Police would actually take on something that no police force to this date in North America has wanted to do. The vulnerability, the openness, the critique. That was not something that many, and still to this day, many organizations, never mind law enforcement, want to actually open up. And when you look at some of the discussions that are happening around the adoption of AI, it's a very high-level academic. There's this idea that grassroots voices are complicated, too slow, and does not foster quick adoption. I was really happy to hear that here at PRP that we had leadership that didn't necessarily want it to be clean. They understand that co-design is messy. They didn't need it to be quick. They needed it to be effective. They needed to be right. And I've kept that cue, not only from PRP, but the community at large has wanted that. So the type of engagement structure that I developed was in response to some of the other engagements I've had, where you have town halls, but not engagement, not real pushback. So you had to pick between the quantitative versus the qualitative narratives. And I chose, because the community said so, qualitative. Having your voice being heard isn't simply having a bunch of shouting. Having your voice being heard is having to get information, having the time to digest it, being able to come back. It's a wave. But what about this, Claudia? What about that situation? Conversations were not 20 minutes. There were 30, in some cases, we would have sit-downs with community members, 20 people at a time, 25 people at a time, 3 hours. One-on-ones, 3 hours. This is not a type of work that was done to check something off. In fact, I started procedures and realized this is not working. Because I didn't have blueprint. And we didn't have a blueprint. And to have that space, to have that air, to actually be able to listen to community was, and still, the reason why I'm really excited and nervous at the same time when I speak into this mic. I really want to thank the community for allowing and being open and being quite frank. I'm going to try to start my computer again because it just died. I've got the power, it's just that it just fades out. I've got a classic Mac here that this did not happen the last time. So while we are setting up, I'll move to the next slide. And I can tell you what the community came up with. The community came up with, it's like my computer does not want me to tell whatever I wrote. Okay. 7 principles. 7 principles that should guide the use and the adoption of AI. Those 7 principles all support human rights, and depending on the arc that you see here, meaning the movement that you see on the screen right now, is a movement of discussion that's logical. However, depending on the situation, a scenario, that arc might change. Tonight we're focusing on privacy. So that's the core. Transparency, one of the things that I would also like to acknowledge was the very last night, the very last moment this happens, but this is technology. This is what happens. All right, so let me start from the beginning again. Again, my name is Claudia McCoy, and I did indeed work on the Peeling Back AI, which is the initiative to actually work with community members, which made this project a community-driven collaboration with residents and local service providers, as well as Peel Regional Police. As I said before, we have an arc in front of us, and that covers transparency, accountability, privacy, security, human-centered values, efficiencies that really impact effectiveness, and community well-being. I'm going to focus on the highlighted areas. As one of the interesting things, many have twinning, and each one of these principles actually rely on each other for them to actually be effective. Traditionally, privacy kind of meant the right to be left alone, to keep one's own thoughts and personal thoughts protected from intrusion to oneself. It's the cornerstone of autonomy, ensuring that individuals can decide what to share and what to withhold. In the age of AI, privacy includes how our data is used to create, to anticipate, and to present information to us. Machine learning, as we discussed the last session, infers intimate details from patterns we may or may not consent to or desire to share. I'll give a little example of that. And I want anyone who plays around with technologies or to actually do this at home. So I am a ChatGPT user, and I watched a documentary or a podcast about the power of ChatGPT's backend. So I tested it out. I decided, well, I have a nickname for my ChatGPT. I call it my ChatGPT, but it's not. And I said, tell me about me. And it proceeded to tell me about what it thought my biases were, what the hopes, my dreams. It went into a whole detail. That's the back end. Someone else went into that. They would have a profile on me. What was interesting in our conversations that we had was that the new world that we're living, the idea of data or privacy being static isn't quite true anymore, because machine learning and generative AI creates information about us, information we may not know. So in the age of AI, privacy includes how our data is being created, as I mentioned before. This is why in Peel Region, our community insisted that privacy must guide every other AI principle. So every principle in there has privacy. So in our Peeling Back AI survey, residents ranked privacy as among of its top 2 priorities, being selected by 1/3 of its respondents as the principle that should dominate AI adoption. So let me just say that again. It ranked top 2 of all the principles that should be used to dominate AI adoption. That's very important. So throughout the survey, and I'm looking forward to presenting the full findings of the survey at a future date in my full report. But what I consistently saw was that even though the principle of privacy wasn't always highly selected, when you went down, it felt that if we had secure systems, if we had accountability, if we had transparency, privacy would be protected. So across different scenarios, from facial recognition to healthcare data sharing, participants in the surveys and in our community discussions repeatedly emphasized that AI should safeguard personal information and adhere to strict data protection standards. When participants discussed law enforcement's use of AI, one phrase appeared over and over again: privacy is important. Even in investigations, they must have strict safeguards to ensure that data isn't misused. This insight becomes the backbone of the principles. So specifically, when we look at transparency enables privacy through visibility, as it protects privacy by ensuring residents understand how and why data is collected, analyzed, and retained. When people know what systems do with their data, they become empowered. Transparency can transform fears into understanding of what personal data, if any. We always assume that the police have all our data, but if any, PRP might have, where that data goes and how it's safeguarded. Accountability follows up. I believe Daniel mentioned this as well. Accountability ensures that the privacy protection is not lost in a black box of bureaucracy. Every AI decision must be traced back to a human being responsible for that ethical use of that data. By building governance structures alongside a community advisory committee, for example, PRP can anchor its privacy protections, making sure that it's tailored to our local needs. As we mentioned before, because tonight we're focusing on privacy, I just want to stress that at the heart of our framework is the principle of privacy. Although I would say that privacy does not trump what I believe guides the entire principles, which is human rights. Privacy commits to limiting access. PRP commits, or hope that PRP commits, and I believe you do, to limiting access to personal data only to those whose roles require it, and to avoid mass collection, and to erase identifiers from all sets. That's the scrubbing of the data. This is profound, and it's to look at data as a sacred entity, fundamental to securing public trust and legitimacy. My goodness, my mouth today. Public trust and legitimacy. We'll talk about the meaning and the importance of trust and legitimacy as we move forward. One thing I also want to mention is, when we went through the data, we noticed that, and the response, and in our conversations, where privacy really took the community's center stage view was around concepts around protests. When protests was mentioned, members were really really clear that they wanted privacy to protect that democratic right. They also saw security as a means, as I mentioned before, making sure you had strong safeguards around the AI tools was also seen as a way of protecting privacy. Security ensures that the sensitive data cannot be stolen, manipulated, or weaponized. Establishing robust security protocols will help safeguard the AI systems PRP adopts and protects residents from unauthorized surveillance or backdoor access. In short, by defending systems, protecting those systems, we defend the privacy they hold. Community well-being is another area that we looked at. When we started the initiative, the core question was not what systems we need to adopt. The question was, how can we serve the community better? How can we adopt AI in a manner that serves community better? Focusing on community well-being reframes privacy as a collective good. So we're going from the personal to the collective. When residents trust their personal information is protected, they engage more openly with police, social service providers, and technicians. This openness is necessary to launch any new community center initiative that could offer new services and new ways to deliver those services, yet will require us to personally opt in. That opt-in relies on trust that their information will remain safe throughout the service delivery pipeline. Privacy fuels participation. A community that feels safe to share becomes a community that helps shape innovation, and this was at the heart of how we proceed with the program, with the initiative, to actually spark the magic of co-design. In our discussions, community activists and community service providers expressed concerns about what they perceive as a correlation between bias and compromised privacy. They worried that without effective measures in place, private information could be used in a way that targets residents, particularly those from marginalized communities. It was this coupling of threat, of bias and targeting that drove their concerns around privacy. In this context, privacy isn't simply about being left alone. It's about upholding and safeguarding human rights. For the community service members, the principle of privacy added yet another layer. As those with the lens that sees across community, they worried about protecting their clients and retaining their legitimacy to preserve trust. How do we access the power of AI without undermining our clients and our community privacy? Was a central question that we heard over and over again. And those community members, those service providers, seek to work with PRP on collaborative means to actually tailor solutions. Therefore, any collaboration with PRP would need to be grounded in the trust that only safeguarding privacy can provide. In closing, Peel Regional Police is the first in North America, I'm so proud to say that, to co-create a community-driven framework for AI in policing. Our principles, transparency, accountability, security, efficiency for effectiveness, human-centered values, and community well-being all are interwoven to one thread. Privacy. Privacy defines not only just what we do, but how we should do it. It's the measure of whether technology strengthens our rights or erodes them. In this way, privacy becomes a measure of progress. Thus, the future of AI here in Peel shouldn't be about the technology we use. It's about who we choose to protect, all of us. I wish to, since this is the last session, I definitely would like to say I wish to thank the residents for taking the time to sharing their concerns and ideas and hopes as we launch into a new technological era. I wish to thank the leadership of Peel Regional Police for believing in their community and trusting them enough to listen and to share. I am very proud to be a part of this initiative. I look forward to continue collective collaborations as Peel Regional Police serves and protects in the era of AI. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Chief, also Professor and Claudia, for kind of leading off the conversation, primarily focused on privacy for today's set of deputations. So we have 5 individuals who will be deputing to us today, and we're going to jump right into it in the interest of time. So the first person up is Danny Oruk DiCarlo. Are you with us, Danny? Pardon me? Oh, that's Danny who just went out. Okay. Oh, Danny's virtual. Oh, so is Danny online and ready to go? Oh, fantastic. So just come in whenever you are ready. Awesome. Is he ready to go? Oh, he's online now? Okay. That's one of the, we're here talking about technology and all of that, and it always seems to have a little wrinkle just when you need it, right?
Unmute, start video. Hello.
Okay. Yes, we can hear you, Danny. Over to you.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Obviously, I wasn't privy to what's been discussed thus far. I think I quickly want to introduce myself and give you guys a sense of what I do, and then maybe provide you with a few questions and concerns that I have regarding the modernization of policing and the use of AI technologies.
Right.
So
And
my
so
name's
Danny, sorry, just before you go ahead, just a reminder, we have given all of our deputants a 5-minute time, okay? So I'll give you a little countdown when there's like 10 seconds left.
Yeah, you bet.
Thank you.
Okay, so very quickly, I am a professor of public policy at York University. I teach policing ethics, criminal law, and criminology, and I also do the same for the Guelph Humber program through justice studies. And I've been doing a lot of research for the last 5 or 6 years on the, let's call it the techno-actuarial turn in policing and policing legitimacy by looking squarely at the United States. So I've been doing a lot of research on how those technologies are being used on a day-to-day basis when it comes to policing state to state in the US, now specifically by ICE. And I guess my question and or concern to the council here, and thank you for having me, is that while I understand that there are great administrative uses and that can be incredibly effective on a daily basis, I know that there's pernicious aspects to this as well. And what we see stateside is that the adoption of AI in deployments like ICE and ICE detentions and deportations is pretty much a textbook example of this shift towards actuarial management of risk and crime. And companies like Palantir are more than happy to provide for the applications that I've termed, to be associated with the commodification of security. So developing systems like Immigration OS, which is designed to streamline the entire enforcement process from identifying, tracking individuals to coordinating removal logistics. And these systems fulfill, as you guys know, operational goals when it comes to geographical target hardening, proactive prevention, and they promise governments at least cost savings in the first instance. But as you guys are also aware of, we're heading into some punitive political waters with bail reform. And I'm just wondering if this particular type of technology, this type of surveillance, which is going to lend to a greater degree of detection and perfect evidence and processing for the purposes of criminal convictions, will eventually end up swelling our carceral correctional institutions. And I'm just wondering, given that I'm talking to Peel Region that has such an incredible history with community policing, how you guys are looking to kind of straddle that line. And I guess within the the minute that I have, that's what I'd like to ask. If that I hope that truncated presentation made sense.
Well, thank you, Danny, for your presentation. We wanted these sessions to be an opportunity for us to listen and to hear the concerns. We don't want it to be a Q&A session, really. We will note the question, of course, and if you were hearing the presentation as it started, we spoke to quite a bit of that around privacy and all of, and so we've been speaking to these things through all the sessions as we've been going along. So what you will see is a document that will compile the feedback, questions, concerns from community members that will be published based on all of the consultations, all of the deputations that we have received. So more than likely your questions will be answered in that entire process. So if is there more you want to contribute to the conversation, or walk away with the question?
Yeah, I think if we can walk away with the question and maybe ruminate on that as we think about, again, policing in terms of community service, policing in terms of community policing, and what the future may look like as we start adopting these particular technologies and what that would mean in terms of incarceration rates. Just something to consider. And again, I had my 5 minutes, so I really appreciate you guys giving me the opportunity to at least field those questions.
Absolutely. We thank you for your deputation, Danny. Thank you so much.
Thank you kindly.
All right. Good. The next person we have is Michael Okoli. Michael is here. Okay, perfect. Michael, just like we did with the previous deputant, we have a 5-minute clock. I will give you a countdown with 10 seconds remaining. The time is now yours.
Can you hear me now? Okay. All right, good evening, everyone. My name is Michael Okole. I'm one of the directors at Nectac Services, Inc. Nectac Services, Inc. is a software development company which focuses on developing artificial intelligence software, robotics, supporting also from a professional services point of view with cybersecurity services. I have my subject here says importance of privacy protection and policies in, AI policing. And a lot has been, said about, policies. So I'm going to really go faster and put emphasis on data protection, data policies as well. Privacy simply is the fundamental human right, and it's been said by previous speakers. And of course, AI resilience on large data set present major challenges as a result. What is data protection? Is the technical safeguard and processes. We've talked about processes several times. And of course, those processes that help to safeguard and to protect user data. As you know, AI is not just a tool, but it's a tool that is driven strongly by what we call big data. When we talk about data, we're talking about data that is provided by individuals, data that is provided by users by way of interacting with those tools. So for that reason, it's important that we put into perspective in the process of the development process that will put into perspective the policy side. So I'll move really fast. Profoundly alter the landscape of enforcement. We've talked about that several times. It offers innovative tools and opportunity to enhance our capabilities in safeguarding public policies. However, alongside these advancements, AI introduces new challenges and potential vulnerabilities. And when we talk about vulnerabilities, we're talking about the security sector. What are those security features that has been put in place to ensure that as people continue to engage with the tools that have been put in place to police, whether it's predictive, whether it's generative, that we put into consideration, of course, that vulnerability piece, which is where protection comes in per se. So what are the importance of privacy data protection in the use of artificial intelligence? This is paramount in ensuring ethical development and public trust. We've talked about trust many times. So if you put in an AI system, let's say, for example, a system to help to monitor crime or track where crime is taking place, then you have to ensure that you're giving the public the confidence to be able to engage with those tools. And that's why this subject is important. So it poses significant risk of surveillance, bias, and data breaches as well. So robust policy framework and data protection privacy and practices are crucial for guiding the responsible, innovative while mitigating these challenges. So we talked about use of AI. We also has to bundle on top of it the privacy. We have to bundle also safeguard. We talk about these days, we talk about safe AI, SAFE, safe AI. So what are those significant data privacy components we have? It helps to protect fundamental human rights. That has been talked about a lot of time by the previous speakers. We talk about it helps to build and maintain public trust. That has been emphasized as well. I mean, for details, feel free to engage and we can narrow down how this can help. But of course, we also look at the significance of data privacy from a perspective of the misuse of personal information. So we've seen instances where individuals are complaining about the exposure of their data as a result of engaging or interacting with an AI tool. So it's important that as we continue to navigate this process of the development lifecycle of our AI tool for policing, that we put all its privacy components into perspective in the development phase. So the importance of data protection per se, strengthening security against cyber attacks, we've mentioned that several times from the previous speakers. It automates compliance and threat detection, addresses inherent risk in AI models. And when we talk about AI model, we're talking about techniques such as federated learning, which trains modern or decentralized data. So when you talk about ML, earlier the speaker said something about it's not just a tool, it's a tool. It drives strongly by the use of big data. It helps also as a result of the protection piece to reduce biases and discrimination that comes from the use of the tool. What are the crucial role of data policies? It helps to establish legal and ethical guardrails. We mentioned that as well. It mandates accountability and transparency. So AI black box nature can make it decision-making opaque. Policy compels companies to be more transparent about how we use it. And we're saying as we navigate these processes of integrating AI tool in policing, it's important that we consider those models. It's important that we work with the different policy makers, work with the different stakeholders to ensure that we have the right policies in place. It also helps to foster consumer and stakeholder trust, encourages responsible innovation. So as we continue to navigate this process, as I mentioned earlier, it's important that those policies are put in place, and not just put in place, but also to educate the people about the use and how their data will be collected, how it will be protected, and how it will be offloaded in the event that they are required. So in summary, given the rapid pace of deployment across the world, as we continue to put these policies together, it's important that as we innovate and we roll out new solutions, that we consider the risk. And we talk about the risk, we're talking about the data aspects, the protection aspect of it, privacy
Michael.
aspect, and of course the policy. So thank you so much. And I'll be open. I know it's 5 minutes, it's very tight to really explore this in 5 minutes.
Yes.
But I'll be open to take questions if you have any. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael, for your contribution. No, we won't be asking any questions. We wanted to give everyone their fair time. I gave a little grace because I recognized you were on the last slide there anyway. But thank you for your contribution. Of course, what you have presented to us will be included in our considered conversation around what we put forward as what we hear from community. So again, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, we want to keep moving along. So the next person, who I believe we have in person, not virtually, correct, is Fahad Iqbal. You're here, Fahad? Yes.
So, okay. You're gonna move the, okay. You're gonna, okay. First of all, thank you everyone, and thank you, Bill, please, for giving me the chance to talk about the AI privacy and data security. And my name is Fahad, and I'm in the industry for more than 2 decades. I have provided to a lot of big firms my consulting services in terms of cybersecurity. So I want to move on to the next slide if you can. Or just, okay. Okay, this is what I was telling you about. So I have consulted a lot of big companies, in my career, and I've also done a youth career fair with law enforcement agencies, and I'm also honored with so many different awards, as you can see on the screen. That's my company, Greenwald, and we have done a lot of good projects for cybersecurity. Right now, I'm working with one of the financial institutions, and I deal with AI and integration every day on a daily basis. And this is what my bread and butter is all about, securing AI. So we're going to answer 5 W's, like, what, where, when, how. So what is privacy? Privacy is about who has access to your data and what they do with it. Privacy law, that GDPR, there's a, CCPA, PIPEDA in Canada, and basically what AI is about, you already know, that's try to simulate human intelligence, basically. So there are 2 kinds of AI. Generative AI, where basically you produce, give the text and images, and it gives you the answer based on that. And there's agentic AI, which is agent-based. It does specific tasks to achieve your goal. So it has all the capital, like if you want to book a flight, basically, and send up the email, so the agent will take care of that, basically. And talking about the data protection, policies, of course, there's a policies that revolve around the data protection of unauthorized access, loss, or misuse. So who are the stakeholder? Stakeholder is everyone, user, developer, business, and government. Who is responsible? The organization also is responsible, and AI developer. So they have to include privacy by design into that, whoever's building the product. The regulator, of course, the government itself, where they have to regulate new regulations, especially in Canada. I think we should do something about the AI specifically. Individual, they access their rights and data rights and awareness. So now we're gonna talk about when, why timing matters. Before the AI deployment, you have to ensure the design privacy control. It's an early stage, means privacy by design. During the data collection training, you have to ensure that you apply anonymization and consent check. On an ongoing basis, you have to update models and policies. For example, if Canada is coming up with the AI regulation, so if we are saying that we have to have a 0-day retention, so we need to adjust to our chatbot so we don't keep the data, on a retention basis for more than 1 day, for example. So just for everyone's understanding. So protecting privacy and building trust, basically here we talk about the user level control. So use vague email for ChatGPT or Copilot if you're using. Don't paste your personal information like SIN number or any PIN or any confidential information. Use the all delete chat option in ChatGPT to remove past conversation. Anonymization, of course, as we talk about removing personal information, and encryption is very important. The data is at rest. You need to ensure that it's protected and while in transit also. And use incognito mode for connecting to that. That's a very key slide. For corporation, this is what I do every day. From corporate level, we need to have anonymization, encryption, and before sending the data to AI, very important, monitoring. Monitoring, logging is your best friend. Logging, covering, like any sort of a prompt, you need to ensure you're covering that. You file, upload, download. You need to, this is a very important thing, use compliance API, and also Microsoft Purview has a data security posture management module, which will cover the Copilot too. So you're gonna monitor everything, what's going on in the chat, GPT or Copilot. That is very important. And applying protection based on data classification, of course, this is a basic thing. If you're highly restricted data, you need to be very careful about all the controls, whether it's a logging, authorization, monitoring, use cases, everything. And then vendor corporation have to have granular admin control, like this is the least privileges, which is a very, very important thing, because those APIs have given a lot of extra control, which should not be there. The second last thing is data leakage. Of course, has to be there, so you don't send the data out. It will be protected and it will be stopped by your organization. Again, authentication, which is a basic MFA or single sign-on, and monitor request response for application, and zero trust is also one of that. Why protecting privacy and building trust? Because it will build public trust and accountability, visibility. If you cannot protect what you cannot see, and prevent misuse, bias, and surveillance, and ensure responsible and ethical growth. Thank you, guys.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Fahad, for the presentation. And again, we will include your comments, your presentation in our review of all the information and data we collect.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it. Moving right along, we have another deputant who is Ahmed Omar. Is Ahmed here and ready to go?
I'm going to be here on behalf of Ahmed, who's right back there.
Ah.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, members of the board, and thank you to community for joining us today. My name is Matthew Varsav. I'm here on behalf of Ahmed and the other members of Dex Labs to speak about how to build trust through partnership. And really to start with many of the things that we've heard already over the last 3 sessions, to talk about both some of the goals of the organization in terms of wanting to engender community trust, to build processes that are transparent and accountable, and of course to always protect privacy while seeking to eliminate bias wherever possible in the face of incomplete data, in the face of situations that are changing all the time, where, as the Deputy Chief brought up, the bleeding edge is moving faster than we can. So how could we look at vendor engagement that drives a human-centric process that's responsive to the evolving community needs as accurately and well laid out through many of the presentations so far? How do we move beyond just government policy towards an extra step of engagement with vendors? And is there something in the information that's already been provided that gives us a hint towards what kinds of partners could be a really strong fit for Peel Regional Police, and through the leading edge work of Peel, other forces as well? And that suggests an idea for a partnership framework, one that involves ethical alignment, community alignment, and developmental alignment that's human-centric, that protects privacy, that always seeks to remove bias so that it builds and strengthens trust in the community. It involves iterative development, because much of what's going to happen will be new, will be people working together through emphasis like co-design that allows us to embrace the ambiguity that's coming while still being flexible to meet those evolving needs. And our suggestion is to go beyond policy, and that the board may want to seek to set up an AI partnership charter that vendors are invited to participate in along with the board. One that is human-centric, that embraces transparency, the right to privacy for all citizens, that is about ongoing partnership towards creating more and better data. Because one of the things that we all embrace is that data is never fully complete, especially in a dynamic environment. That at the end of the day, when we do this and embrace the community engagement that's already been discussed as one part of an ongoing process, it allows for that human-centric feedback loop to prevent and remove biases. And there are a few examples of that we can point to internationally, including the British Health Service and the AI charter that they have started to embrace, when we talk about how Peel can be able to lead from the front while also ensuring that no one is left behind. And that suggests some potential characteristics that the Peel Regional Police and the board as oversight may wish to look at from a partnership standpoint. That there's an importance in terms of having partners that understand the dynamic in Peel, We all know that Peel isn't the same as other places, whether it's in the US or across Canada. And therefore, it's important for partners to be able to have an intuitive understanding of the local needs here in Peel, that fundamentally embrace the idea that it's through ongoing dialogue that trust can be built and strengthened, and organizations that themselves reflect the cultural diversity which is part of the strength of Peel Region. And it's not enough just to align ethically and morally, but also to look at how does the approach to developing solutions align with Peel? And the deputy chief is quite humble in terms of what he talks about where the police services are. I've had the opportunity to engage with police groups from all around North and South America, and this is literally the leading edge of community engagement. And so it's important that any partners align from that standpoint as well, that they believe in the importance of iterative approaches, of taking steps together, of looking at out-of-the-box solutions while still being focused on how to deliver the end goals while being budget-focused, and that really are focused on partnership. And so from that standpoint, those are our suggestions that the board may wish to look at, is that development of an AI security ethical framework that allows for a partnership that vendors could opt into as a way of demonstrating alignment with the board and with the initiatives and goals of Peel Regional Police and the region more specifically. And from that standpoint, if any questions come up, we'll be happy to answer them at any point in the future. But thank you so much for the opportunity to speak here today. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you, Matthew, for your contribution. And I know we are going to follow up with you. A couple of things you mentioned that I'm sure piqued some interest. Anthony's over here making notes furiously. I hear the keyboards going. So I know we'll be reaching out to further that conversation. A couple of things you mentioned about humans as the loop and not just in the loop. I wanted to maybe unpack that a little bit more. And some other things around that charter. We'll certainly want to hear your thoughts further on those. Thank you. All right, and our final deputant today is Varsha Dinodia. And thank you for making the time to be here, Varsha. Are you going to come to this where everyone else presented from? There is touch where it says to speak. When it goes red, it will be your turn.
A very good evening to everyone. Hi, my name is Varsha Dinodia, and I'm very humbled to be in this room of experts for 3 times in a row and maybe onwards. 2020, the real estate giant that owns the topmost malls across Canada, Cadillac Fairview, made use of a technology called anonymous video analytics through its wayfinding directories and collected 5 million numerical representation of faces, linking them to age and gender of patrons visiting those malls without their consent. Today, when I visit Square One Mall or any other mall, I do not use the wayfinding directories because I am fearful and anxious that who may be surveilling me or capturing my picture on a wayfinding directory without my consent, which is a violation of the primary principle of Personal Information Protection and Electronics Documents Act, PIPEDA 2000, informed consent. 2022, despite having a robust policy on data retention and data disposal, the global financial service provider, Morgan Stanley, made a settlement payment of $60 million because it failed to properly wipe out the information from decommissioned data equipment before selling it off. I am concerned that this is a clear indication that despite having policies, despite having procedures, we still can have mishap. So here, the lapse is implementation of policy and not the policy itself. With the fruit of poisonous tree doctrine and evidence is inadmissible in the court of law if the primary source of obtaining that evidence is illegal and unethical. Clearview AI, the American technology firm, clearly violated all principal laws which are aligned with Canadian laws, federal laws, and provincial laws, and scrapped 3 billion images from social media portals like Facebook and Twitter and Instagram. And yet, law enforcement agencies such as RCMP and many other police agencies made use of Clearview AI. My concern here is that despite having policies and despite using third-party IT technology and software providers, how do we have and put the guardrails to protect ourselves and to those who are at stake, which is public at large, to whom we serve and protect? What are the guardrails? Vendor assessment, fair bidding process, continuous vendor evaluation, comparative quotation analysis, making sure that today the third-party provider who are giving us services to make use of AI continuously, ethically, and legally source this information of individuals, which is personal and secure. At the same time, do we also ensure, do we have termination clause that in case if these third-party providers are no longer ethical or legal, do we have a backup plan or do we have a transition plan? How are we going to retain that information and how are we going to transit to the new service provider? At the same time, it is also important when we are making decisions in procuring these IT service providers, we are also considering ethical reasoning by applying coherently utilitarianism, where our actions are responsible not just on the outcome of our actions, which is to serve and protect, but also coherently applying deontology, where we know that certain actions are right or wrong or incorrect. So it is very important when in the age of AI, we are accepting that artificial intelligence is here to stay, we also acknowledge that the goal is not to surveil and predict, but it is also to serve and protect, and it must not be superseded by any technology or any software. Thank you.
Awesome. Good job, Varsha. Thank you so much for your presentation and for, again, just the reminder of the guardrails that needs to be implemented even as we are rolling out any type of AI solutions. I think that's the whole point of us having these community consultations, so that, because we understand that the use of these tools needs to happen in an environment where trust is built. And community engagements like these is hopefully helps to build that trust with you and to hear your concerns and make sure that we address those as we are rolling out any kind of tool. You reminded us of some cases in which, and again, I'm not verifying the information you presented, but those were clear warning signs, if you will, as you presented them, that we should be mindful of as we think about how we move forward with any of the tools that will impact the members of our community. And that's kind of what the goal of the board and the service. The police service has its own set of community engagement sessions, as Claudia had mentioned. So there is constant conversations going on with community to hear their concerns. This initiative is primarily led by the board itself that has a responsibility around building trust and engaging with our community. So that these 3 sessions, although our deputy chief was here and helped guide the conversation as a subject matter expert, it's important for you to know that these 3 sessions were being led by the board itself, because again, you should know the board is made up of civilian community individuals like yourself that provide oversight for policing. And we want to ensure that as we are going through this path together, that we provide the necessary oversight. So this has been an informative series of sessions for us as board members. The members who you see here make up the Governance and Human Rights Committee of the board. And so we are driving this part of the conversation on behalf of the rest of the board, but we provide updates to the full board around these sessions and what our learnings are, and will help inform any policy and procedures and stuff like that that move forward. So I want to extend a huge thank you to all of those who participated, not just today, but in the previous sessions, those who participated from the pews. We are kind of running up against time, and so we want to, just wrap up with a thank you, an acknowledgement that we will not move forward with any major implementations without this kind of engagement with our community. And so I invite you to, therefore, keep your eyes open for the report that will come out of these sessions, and hopefully we will do a good job of capturing all of the concerns and the questions that have been raised, and find as best way we can to give you the answers and the assurance that you need as a community that we are doing this in a co-design, collaborative way so that you can have trust in the work that is being done. So as I started off with a thanks, I close with a thank you to my fellow board members, to all of you as community, to the service, and those who are here, to the experts who participated. Thank you all for your time and your attention to this very important community dialogue. Thank you. Have a great evening, everyone.
Thank you.